Acknowledged by waving or standing. Mr. Vincent Floriani, Consul General of Chicago, Republic of France. Mr. Josh Nerley, Honorary Consul, Republic of France, Northern Ohio. Major Robert Cooksey, Assistant Professor of Military Science, Edinboro University. Ohio State Representative John Patterson of the 99th District. Mr. Nick Church, Conneaut Council President. The founder of the Hershel Woody Williams Medal of Honor Foundation, Mr. Hershel Woody Williams, World War II Medal of Honor recipient. And your biggest round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our World War II veterans on stage and in the audience today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will now call upon opening remarks from Major Robert Cooksey, Assistant Professor of Military Science, Edinboro University, Edinboro, Pennsylvania. Sir.
Thank you. On behalf of all those who served our armed forces today, I would like to thank everyone for being a part of this outstanding living history event here on the shores of Lake Erie. This is my second time attending D-Day Conneaut, and it has been my pleasure seeing firsthand how popular this event is and how much it's grown over the past year. I'm relatively young at 44, yet there is one generation between myself and what has been called the greatest generation. The men here on stage and those moving amongst you throughout the park. As we honor them by our presence here today, it is easy to grasp the importance of events like this. As time continues to march by in our very busy world, it becomes harder to look back and remember the sacrifices and hardships endured by those who fought and lived during the Second World War. That is why the hard work and dedication shown by all the reenactors present here is so important. These living historians help keep alive the memory of those who fought and died for our freedom and provide a living, interactive museum for our children. The reenactor restores the life to units that have long since been disbanded and maintains the traditions of units still in existence. Through their work and their attention to historical detail, we are given a glimpse into life from yesteryear. We can see how they lived and dressed and experienced the details of their everyday life, in camp or at home. The battle reenactments provide a snapshot of what it must have been like for so many of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who fought for liberty. As a member of today's military, I would like to think in years to come that my time in uniform would be valued enough and deemed worthy enough for others to want to recreate and remember the challenges our generation has faced and that which is today's news. I thank you for allowing me to be a part of it here today.
At this time, I'll call upon Mr. Josh Nerley, Consul Honoraire for France, with a list of prior recipients of the Legion of Honor.
Thank you. And in just a few minutes, we will have the honor of seeing the Legion of Honor bestowed on veterans who fought to liberate France and the French people. But we are honored today to have on the stage with us veterans who have already received the Legion of Honor. And I would like to recognize them and ask that you hold your applause until I'm done. Mr. Alan Atwell, Mr. Elmer DeLucia, Mr. Clifford Goodall, Mr. Mike Manzio, Mr. Guy Prestia, Mr. Fred Pearson, Mr. John Razum, Mr. Andy Sinkovich, and Mr. Russell Taylor. And because life is not perfect, have we missed anybody in the audience or on the stage? Every once in a while it is perfect. Thank you.
At this time, we'll ask Monsieur Vincent Floriani to address you. He's the Consul General of Chicago for the Republic of France. He'll make the presentation of the French Legion of Honor, and he'll be assisted by Mr. Nurley and Ms. Deborah Bates as medal bearer. Monsieur.
Good morning. Well, good afternoon, sorry. Dear Mr. Doehrel, Mr. Elliott, dear Mr. Hannay, Mr. Kizina, dear Mr. Klugiewicz, dear Mr. Sudyk, and dear Mr. Wagner, honored veterans, dear Representative Patterson, dear organizers of D-Day Conneaut, and everyone gathered here today. It is a great honor and privilege to be this year again with you for the D-Day Conneaut events and to pay tribute to 7 great men, 7 veterans who were ready to sacrifice their lives for France and for Western Europe during Second World War II. This special tribute is also dedicated to all American soldiers who embarked on the difficult journey to free a whole continent from intolerance, violence, and the tyranny of fascism. 72 years ago, many young Americans put their ideals, their might, and their courage to the service of the liberation of France, to the service of democracy and the dignity of humankind. They fought bravely, battle after battle, across France. And like Mr. Doehrel, Mr. Elliott, Mr. Hannay, Mr. Kizina, Mr. Klugiewicz, Mr. Sudyk, and Mr. Wagner, they witnessed the worst of the war. Many did not return, but they are in our hearts. Unfortunately, the veterans present here today are here to help us remember. Twice last century, in 1917 and 1944, American soldiers restored freedom to my country. France and the French people will never forget what they owe America, our steadfast friend, partner, and ally. I came back from France yesterday evening, and I was in my little village in South France. And every year, on August 15, people remember the Dragon operation, the invasion of Provence to liberate this part of France. From Lafayette and Yorktown to the battlefields of World War II and the shores of Normandy, that is for over 238 years, our two countries have always stood shoulder to shoulder to defend and promote the values of freedom and democracy that are the core of who we are. On that 6th of June of immortal memory, the tide turned. The D-Day landing reenacted today in Conneaut changed the course of the history of humanity. Victory was still far off. There was still suffering to come, but hope was here, alive again at last. Today, it is that same hope, that same ideal that we owe to those men whom we can never forget. To the French people, the American veterans are heroes. On behalf of the French government and of the French people, I would like to thank all the veterans. Your commitment is an example, an obligation for us and for future generations. There can be no future without memory. The torch you carried so high and so far, the torch of freedom and dignity and justice and democracy, still lights our way. Faced with the uncertainties of a changing world, let us strive to remain loyal to the legacy, the sacrifice, and the values of the heroes who liberated France. The French Legion of Honor shows France's eternal gratitude to all the veterans. And Mr. Doehrel, Mr. Elliott, Mr. Hannay, Mr. Kizina, Mr. Klugiewicz, Mr. Sudyk, and Mr. Wagner deserve this prestigious decoration. Mr. Leroy Tyrell entered active duty in February 1943. He served as a technical sergeant with a 256th Engineer Combat Battalion, where he was a truck driver. From November 1944 until March 1946, Mr. Doehrel was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division, fought in the Rhineland and in Central Europe. In France, he fought in the Alsace-Lorraine region. He fought during the harsh winter of 44 and 45, in particular in the Colmar Pocket, known as the last stronghold of Germany on French territory. Thank you for your service, sir. Mr. Russell Elliott entered active duty in April 1943. He served as a technical sergeant in the C Company 141st Infantry Regiment with the 36th Division. He took part in major campaigns: Italy, southern France, during Operation Dragon in August 1944, the Rhineland, and finally Central Europe. Mr. Elliott was wounded in combat on 4 occasions, including twice in France in October 1944 during an enemy counter-attack. Thank you for your service, sir. Mr. Robert Hannay entered active duty in 1943. He served as a Seaman first class on the landing ship tank 281, where he was a gunner. He participated in 2 major operations in France: the D-Day landing in Normandy on June 6, 1944 at Utah Beach, where the LST 281 was one of the very first vessels onto the beach, and Operation Dragoon in August 1944 in southern France. Mr. Hannay and his crewmates' main mission was to transport vehicles, cargo, and landing troops on shore during the early Allied invasions. Mr. Hannay was later deployed in Asiatic Pacific Theater. Thank you for your service, sir. Mr. Charles Kizina entered active duty in July 1943. He served as a technician 5th grade with the Battery B 135th Anti-Aircraft Artillery Gun Battalion. He arrived in France in September 1944 and fought in northern France before joining the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, also known as the Ghost Army, the famous Tactical Deception Unit. Mr. Kizina took also part in the Battle of the Bulge and in the liberation of the Doehrel concentration camp in Germany and Austria. Thank you for your service, sir. Mr. Aloysius Klugiewicz entered active duty in February 1941. Mr. Klugiewicz, who celebrated his 101st birthday in June. He formally joined the US Cavalry Corps in 1934. Discharged in 1938, he rejoined the service prior to the United States entering World War II. During the war, he served as a Master Sergeant with the 331st Infantry Regiment in the 83rd Division, where he was a communications chief. Mr. Klugiewicz landed at Omaha Beach on D-Day +17. On July 4th, his division engaged in its very first battle in the village of Saint-Denis, after relieving the 101st Airborne Division. That day, the 81st lost 1,500 men in combat. Mr. Klugiewicz participated in all subsequent battles throughout Normandy, northern France, the Rhineland, the Ardennes, and Central Europe. Thank you for your service, sir. Mr. John Sudyk entered active duty in 1942. He served as a corporal in Battery C 187th Field Artillery Battalion, Corp Artillery. Mr. Sudyk, a gun mechanic, landed at Omaha Beach during the D-Day offensive to support the 29th Infantry already in combat. Mr. Sudyk and his artillery battalion spearheaded the subsequent thrust of the American army through Normandy, northern France, the Rhineland, the Ardennes, during the Battle of the Bulge, Alsace, and Central Europe. Thank you for your service, sir. Mr. Albert Wagner entered active duty in 1942. He served as motor machinist mate first class in the US Navy aboard the YMS 83 Minesweeper. Mr. Wagner and his 27 crewmates participated in Operation Dragoon in southern France in August 15, 1944. The mission consisted of clearing mines ahead of the invasion flotilla. Mr. Wagner remained in France until October, when his minesweeper was transferred to the French Navy. Mr. Wagner also participated in the Italian and the Asiatic Pacific theater campaigns. Thank you for your service, sir. For their bravery, the veterans present here today have all received prestigious American military distinctions. Thanks to their courage, to France's American friends and allies, France has been living in peace for 7 decades, the longest period of continuous peace in modern French and Europe history. 72 years ago, along with 800,000 of your fellow countrymen, you left America for unknown lands at a very young age to participate in the liberation of France. You were ready to sacrifice your young lives for France's freedom, for a country that was not even yours. Now it is. The images of these days are part of our collective memory. We will always remember the ultimate sacrifice of so many of you comrades who rest on French soil. Gratitude and remembrance are forever on our soul. Every French person has a special place in their heart for you. Dear veterans, in recognition of your heroic actions and to show its gratitude, the President of the French Republic nominated you to the Legion of Honor. Created by Napoleon Bonaparte in 1802, it is the highest honor that France can bestow upon those who have achieved remarkable deeds for France. You wanted France to be free and you fought to liberate France. These are the highest deeds. I could not be more honored to present the Legion of Honor medal to you today. So to each and every one of you, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Merci. Now I will bestow the medal and I will say some words in French, official words in French, which is much easier for me. Monsieur Leroy Tyrell, au nom du Président de la République, je vous fais chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.
Sorry, this is my dad.
Vincent et Elliot. Au nom du Président de la République, je vous fais chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Hannay, au nom du Président de la République, je vous fais chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Kizina, au nom du Président de la République, je vous fais chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.
Get at the newspaper gal behind me.
Au nom du Président de la République, je vous fais chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. John Sudyk, au nom du Président de la République, je vous fais chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.
We'll ask you to stand or remain standing, ladies and gentlemen, for the national anthem of France, La Marseillaise, performed by Ms. Deborah Bates.
Allons enfants de la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé. Contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant élevé, l'étendard sanglant élevé. Entendez-vous dans les campagnes mugir ces féroces soldats? Ils viennent jusque dans nos bras, égorger nos fils, nos compagnes. Aux armes, aux citoyens, formez vos bataillons. Marchons, marchons, que sang impur abreuve nos sillons.
You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, we're calling on a very special guest for closing remarks. Can you please welcome World War II Medal of Honor recipient, Hershel Woody Williams.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What a glorious day. Where all these people come from? We got more people here than we got in West Virginia. It is my first year to be here, and I'm just kind of underwhelmed, if you will. Wow! I'm going to wait to see if there's another one. Maybe not. I have to stand up for my own state of West Virginia because our slogan is, Mountaineers are always free. I've taught Sunday school for about 40-some years, and one of the Sunday school teachers in my church was teaching her young kids, young students, about heaven. You know, we are almost heaven. That's our slogan.
Because you're next to Ohio.
Right next to Ohio. Okay, I'll buy that. But she says to her class, if I sold my house and my car, had a big garage sale, gave all my money to the church, would that get me into heaven? And of course, the children in one voice said, no! Well, if I cleaned the church every day, mowed the lawn, kept everything neat and tidy, would that get me into heaven? All together? No! Well then, if I was kind to animals, gave candy to all the children, loved my wife, would that get me into heaven? Again, no! Well then she said, what would get me into heaven? And in one voice, they said, move to West Virginia. It's almost heaven. Might be as close as you'll ever get. I want you to put yourself in a position, in your imagination, you are a 22-year-old individual. You were born and raised in the country, never subjected to any society to amount to anything except in your own community, where about everybody knew everybody. And all of a sudden, you are told by a high-ranking general in the Marine Corps, you are being sent back home from Guam to receive the Medal of Honor. I had never heard of the Medal of Honor. I didn't know the term, so it didn't mean anything to me. My only joy was, after 2.5 years, I am going to get to go home. Whatever he said otherwise didn't click. Well, then on October the 5th, you find yourself sitting on the White House lawn with admirals and generals and congressmen and senators and all of these very important people in America. You are there with 13 other individuals, 22 Marines and 5 sailors. You really don't know why you're there. You are just following orders. Still never having heard or had any explanation of what the Medal of Honor was, or even why I was receiving it. Naturally, in the military, we go alphabetical. So as a W, I'm next to last because we had a guy by the name of Zimmer. I felt sorry for him a little bit. But as they called us up, we had to approach the President of the United States of America. Somebody most of us never dreamed we would ever see. And we're walking up to him to stand almost nose to nose. Put yourself in that position. I was so frightened. I was a bashful, shy country boy. I shouldn't even be here. And my body is doing this. And I absolutely have no control of it at all. I don't even know what the president is saying. I am so frightened, I'm not getting anything except fear. They read my citation that I had never heard before, didn't know what it was, or who said it, or why it was even being said. And then they handed the president a blue ribbon like this with a medal. And it was his job to put that around the neck, my neck, and the neck of every individual. He couldn't even see what he was doing. His putting the ribbon together, fastening it together, was behind our head. Occasionally a Navy guy would come and help him snap it. My body is still shaking. And he puts his left hand on this shoulder. I don't know why. I've kiddingly said I think it was to keep me from jumping out of my shoes, because my body was still going. And he said to me, as he said in various ways to every recipient that he presented the medal to, I would rather have this medal than to be president. I had no response whatsoever because of my fear. And then I went back to my seat. There was a young Marine there that day, the youngest Marine to ever receive the Medal of Honor since the Civil War. Jacqueline Lucas had not reached his 18th birthday yet. Jacqueline Lucas had jumped on 2 grenades to protect his Marine buddies. One didn't go off. Consequently, Jack Lucas lived. Jack Lucas never saw a bashful day in his life. And after the whole ceremony was over, we found out that when the president said to Jack Lucas, "I would rather have this medal than to be president," Jack Lucas said, "I'll trade you." I have said from the day after that this medal was placed around my neck that it does not belong to me. It belongs to those Marines who gave their life protecting mine. So I have said constantly and forcefully, I am just the caretaker of this medal. It's theirs, not mine. Thank you.
Now I think we've established which state Mr. Williams is from. But our recipients today are from the states of Ohio and Pennsylvania. And there are state proclamations to be presented to the new Chevaliers by Representative John Patterson, assisted by Mr. Nick Church, and they'll be doing this also on behalf of Senator Sean Wiley of the 49th Legislative District of the Commonwealth, Pennsylvania. Gentlemen.
Gentlemen, on behalf of the state of Ohio and the 99th District, and my colleagues in the great state of Pennsylvania, and of course, Council President Nick Church, we are here to present certificates, commendations from our 2 great states. And instead of having you sit or stand, we're actually going to deliver them to you. Is that all right, gentlemen? We're very grateful. I would also like to thank the organizers of this great event, the participants in this great event. Thank you for coming, the spectators, and to my dear colleagues from the French government, Vive la France. To Technical Sergeant Leroy Tyrell, State of Pennsylvania. Yep. To Mr. Russell Elliott from the State of Ohio. Mr. Robert Hannay from the State of Ohio. Corporal Charles Kizina from Pennsylvania. Master Sergeant Klugiewicz from Pennsylvania. And from Ohio and my district, Geauga County, Mr. John Sudyk. And from Ohio, another W, Mr. Albert Wagner. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, on behalf of the organizers of D-Day Conneaut, we thank you, merci. And at this time, we turn your attention to the Guards of Honor who will now march past in honor of our new recipients, les gens d'honneur. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good day at Conneaut.
He's good.
Oh, he is.
Amazing,